This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of June 10th, 2024, alongside my tag team partner, Matt Moscardi. I'm Damian Rollis. On today's countdown, Alphabet steals a CFO from a pharmaceutical company. Southwest Airlines CEO Bob Jordan is not looking for career advice. Walmart shareholders care more about pigs than employees. Tesla shareholders appear to be out of their collective minds. And on the big vote, an airline company board so dull they named it Delta. Let's get to our trade wire. On June 5th, 2024, Eli Lilly and Company announced that Anat Ashkenazi resigned as CFO to, quote, pursue another career opportunity outside of the pharmaceutical industry. On the same day, Alphabet announced the appointment of Anat Ashkenazi as the new CFO of Alphabet and Google. Do we think Alphabet is the other career opportunity outside of the pharmaceutical industry? Come on, Eli Lilly.
No way.
Just tell us. We have Google. We can just Google, right, to find out who the new CFO is? Nike's longest tenured director, Alan Graf Jr., who was appointed to the Nike board before Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl. That just feels like ancient times.
Yeah, it might have been 100 years ago.
Is finally stepping down. What's most remarkable about Graf is not his tenure of over 20 years. It's his lowly influence of just 2% on the Nike board. Travis Knight, son of founder Philip, maintains 54% of influence at Nike. Large cap boards will have one less Murray and two more Marias. Murray Roos stepping down at Trade Web Markets. Maria Moats joining at Casey's General Stores, and Maria Martinez, a new director at Tyson Foods. And lastly, at Carrier Global Corporation, Timothy White, the company's president, refrigeration, will transition into the newly established role of Chief Product Officer effective July 1st, 2024. I just wanted to say President Refrigeration.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
That's it.
President Refrigeration. That's all they say.
That's all I wanted to say.
Refrigeration.
Let's move over to proxy cage matches. Southwest Airlines CEO Bob Jordan says thanks but no thanks to Elliott Investment Management, which on Monday publicly disclosed a $1.9 billion stake in the airline and demanded new leadership. On Wednesday, Artisan Partners Limited Partnership, Southwest's ninth largest shareholder, urged the board to reconstitute itself and upgrade company leadership. I have no plans to resign, CEO Bob Jordan said. My 150% focus, I think that alone maybe should force him out, right?
Yeah, he doesn't know math.
My 150% focus is on supporting our employees, doing good for our customers, and executing the wonderful plan we have to get better. Elliott said, Southwest board does not include any director with external airline experience. It called for the board's reconstitution with new, truly independent directors possessing expertise in airlines, customer experience, and technology. Luckily, Matt, we have all that data now. We can tell you what's going on at Southwest.
We've actually told clients a year ago, a little bit more, that Southwest was a likely target for an activist because of the constitution of its board, because they lacked the skills, because of the underperformance overall. They were an age outlier. They were the oldest board of any airline on Earth, on average, by influence. So this was foreseeable. Not only was it foreseeable,
it was foreseen by us.
It was foreseen.
Yes.
And I'm a little confused, though, why CEO Bob Jordan isn't laser focused. He is 150% focused.
I was going to ask you, which is bigger, a laser focus or 150%? I don't know.
Well, by the math, 150% would be, I think.
That's 1.5 lasers. And at Tesla, part-time CEO Elon Musk has already declared victory before Tesla's shareholder meeting this afternoon, June 13th, 2024, because Why wait for the actual meeting to happen and for all the votes to actually come in and waste another opportunity to prove that Tesla's stock is essentially a meme stock that Matt pointed out a few weeks ago that operates outside of the scope of normal fundamentals, those same normal fundamentals that the anti-ESG crowd purports to worship, by the way.
Yeah, lest we forget, where is Bill Ackman right now? He lost his mind when this happened at Disney. In fact, here's a quote, from a tweet quote from Bill Ackman. Quote, "There have been a few recent articles in the press about Disney winning its proxy contest with Nelson Peltz based on early election returns that have been leaked to the media. We don't have an investment in Disney, but I thought it useful to point out the inappropriateness of these leaks to the press. The company and or its advisors have leaked the early results in order to tip more institutions and other shareholders to vote for the incumbent board, unfairly tipping the scale in the incumbent board's favor. Institutions who have already voted still have time to change their vote. It is time we make an example out of Disney here so that this bad practice does not continue to poison shareholder democracy."
Incredible. Nice
Bill
callback.
Ackman,
Yeah.
Nothing on this so far.
What was that, like a month ago? I mean, that was
in April.
Yeah.
We're talking about a month and a half ago.
Moving over to our vote results table. I looked at 32 annual meetings over the last week. Again, these are the largest cap companies in the U.S., roughly the S&P 500. As usual, the vast majority of directors received well over 90% support. Only 8 directors out of those 32 companies received more than 20% votes withheld. Kelly Battles at Arista Networks, Richard Barton at Netflix, 2 directors at Comcast, and 3 directors at Warner Brothers Discovery, and finally David Kostman, a 30% no vote at Unity Software. That 30% no vote, the highest out of all directors. Matt, 6 of those directors were at media companies, which appears to be really the only industry, speaking of Disney, where shareholders are paying attention. So no surprise there. The week's big winners are Angelique Brunner at CoStar Group, 99.9% yes. And at DaVita, Wendy Schoper and Dennis Poulin, 99.93% support. Incredible.
Who's the 0.07%? That's what
Probably an ex-spouse. There continues to be wide support for pay practices. Only one of those companies I looked at showed considerable dissent, with more than 20% of voters saying no. And that's at a media company, Warner Brothers Discovery. Say on pay, 47% said no to pay at Warner Brothers Discovery. Again, this constant fascination with media companies. Moving over to the world of shareholder proposals, let's start with the victories. Both were calling for the adoption of a shareholder right to call a special shareholder meeting. 70% said yes at ANSYS. And again, Matt, at Warner Brothers Discovery, 52% of shareholders said yes to this. So if you want shareholders engaged at a company, I think media seems to be the only place to get that done. Next up are the almost victories. 49% said yes to a shareholder proposal calling for an independent board chair at Corpay. And
you have to negotiate that, don't you? Yeah.
And again, at a media company, Netflix, we have 2 votes that nearly passed. 43% said yes for a report on Netflix's use of artificial intelligence, and 46% said yes for a special shareholder meeting improvement. And finally, here are some of my favorite oddities from the shareholder proposal world from last week. A proposal requesting a report on the use of AI at Warner Brothers Discovery, once again, received 24% support. That's a big one. This one was brought by every good bureaucrat in New York City. Ready for this? New York City Employees Retirement System, New York City Police Pension Fund, the Teachers Retirement System, the New York City Fire Pension Fund, the New York City Board of Education Retirement System, and the New York City Everything Bagel Toasted Lightly with Cream Cheese Guild. So that's great there, New York City. At Walmart, this is how shareholders rank some of society's most pressing issues. This is fascinating to me. So there were several shareholder proposals up at Walmart. 13% said yes to support the publication of targets for transitioning from gestation crates in pork supply chain. You know I love everything pig, so I love this.
I love a good pork supply chain.
That's 13% saying yes to that. 15% said yes to a racial equity audit, so they care slightly more about a racial equity audit than they do the pigs. 19% said yes to a review of workplace safety and violence. That seems, another obvious one. I mean, I would have voted for that. But Matt, a proposal on living wages for the vast army of workers at Walmart. And it's over 1 million, is it not? Which is roughly the population of my home state.
It's like 1.5 million, yeah.
A lowly 4% said yes to that. That's well below the number who supported, pigs moving from this crate to that crate, which I support, by the way. But a shocking 4% supporting living wage proposal.
I got a couple pieces of advice. First of all, at Walmart, you can't win. Right? There's a lot of shareholder proposals at places that you can't win. And what I think it speaks to the fact that we're seeing AI proposals at places like Netflix, who's not creating AI. The places that are creating AI are all dual class. You can't do anything about them.
Yeah.
So use the Netflix approach, which is maybe you should file a shareholder proposal about pig gestation crates at a one class, one vote company that's adjacent to Walmart. See what happens.
And finally, back to Netflix, a very logical and simple request from the New York City Carpenters Pension Fund. I never heard of that one. Asking basically for directors, ready to follow this, Matt? Listen very carefully. All they want is for directors to resign if they get more no votes than yes votes. Okay, that's it. That's all they want. This got the support of only 16% of shareholders. That is impossible to me.
That's 16%. One of the best. That is one of the best shareholder proposals I've seen this year. And if you're the New York City Carpenters Pension, are you annoyed you got left out of the Warner Brothers Discovery list? Everybody else was on that list from New York.
Are there a lot of wood skyscrapers in New York City? I don't recall that. That's it for the our big vote results table. Let's move on to the big vote for the week of June 10th, 2024. We have, we're looking at airlines, Matt, which I don't know if you're terribly excited about.
No.
We have a meeting at Delta coming up on June 20th, 2024. Delta in the news a lot recently, basically for not sucking, right? It's the number one on a list of American airlines companies that don't really seem to suck. Globally, they're way down. They're like number 20, but in America, I guess they're the best.
Well, they're the largest cap airline, I think, in the world.
Is that right?
And if you're an owner of Delta, I mean, just to jump right in,
go.
You're happy because Delta is outperforming all the other airlines, but it's like the winningest loser.
Yeah.
It's the whole industry. The industry context matters here. If you're thinking about Delta in context of like other industries. Delta beat the S&P in a 2-year, and they're the only ones who beat the S&P in the last 2 years.
In the US.
In America, out of American airlines. In the 5-year, they lost to the S&P, but they were better than all the other airlines.
Okay.
So that's being the winningest loser. And I know that's the pandemic years. They took $11 billion in pandemic bailout funding.
And that was only, 15 years after it declared bankruptcy?
I mean, it's not exactly got a long track record of success, is my point.
No, it doesn't.
Airlines are crappy as an industry. They're low performance generally. The board reflects that. It's a relatively low performing board relative to the industry peers or sector peers, not airline industry, but sector peers. Persistent boom bust cycles. They always end in consolidation and bankruptcy. It's like media, right? Like, I don't know why every billionaire wants to buy a media company. Airlines are basically media companies. Like, it might as well be. The cycles are the same. Just buy an airline.
Well, actually,
you lose the same amount of money.
Actually, we have seen a lot of media types billionaire tycoon types buying airlines over the years, right? I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking Richard Branson, right? Virgin.
Yeah, but less so.
Even Donald Trump had his own airline for a while.
We're counting that.
Okay, I'm just saying. I'm sure there are other examples, but that off the top of my head there.
And not only do shareholders just relatively universally agree that even the best airline only trades at a 9 PE ratio, but customers universally agree that airlines stink. Well, nobody likes an airline.
They're terrible, yeah. At least here in the United States, they're terrible.
The Treasury is trying to sell the warrants. They're starting the auctions for the warrants that they issued during the pandemic to the airlines. A lot of the Treasury should make some money on this because the strike prices are in Treasury's favor for right now. But actually, I want to talk about something that seems to be an industry trend because
Go ahead.
It'll put Delta in that context, which is the Southwestification of airlines.
Okay.
We're now talking about Southwest has a activist
smellier
investor.
and more crowded. Is that in poor service? Is that what you're talking about?
It's basically stripping down service entirely to its basest form, including the Southwest lines. Do you remember the Southwest lines?
It's terrible.
It was horrible. It was a literal cattle herd.
It's like it's immediate anxiety before the anxiety of flying.
But Gary Kelly, who's still on the board of Southwest, was the CFO in the 90s, and he did the first really successful version of fuel hedging. So basically, he transformed Southwest from just an airline that takes customer from A to B at the lowest cost possible and manages the sort of licensing and the FAA and all that kind of stuff to a trading house. Their profits, Southwest profits were buoyed for 40 years by versions of trading. Since the 90s, it's basically been the way that they maintain low prices on top of slashing every possible customer service.
Is this why we see I talked about the airline industry coincidentally on our show on Tuesday. Is this why you see, according to our skills data that we now have, is this why you see so much economic and accounting expertise on these airline boards? Especially in America. It's exactly higher than anything else, higher than transportation skills, higher than mechanical skills.
In fairness to the sector, like sort of finance experience on corporate boards in America is number one. Mm-hmm. But the airlines have taken it to a new level. In fact, almost every airline's board, their base knowledge is finance. CFOs is like the most popular title today on an airline board. Virtually every single one of them. And Southwest was the first to add an oil and gas person on their board. They added somebody in 2004.
Okay.
They added their first oil and gas person to a board. Delta did it in 2012 with Bill Easter, who's actually retiring this year, and replacing Bill Easter with Willie Chiang, who's another oil and gas person.
Yeah.
Now it's basically you always have a bunch of finance people and an oil person so that your whole business model is not about transport logistics. There's no transportation on these boards. Your whole business model is trading oil futures, minimizing the cost of oil and gas.
And to your point, there are two new directors coming on. It's a point of contention that has nothing to do with Delta, maybe has to do with American boards in general. Two new directors joined the Delta board in April, and now shareholders are being asked to vote on them. But they're already directors, so really it's a rubber stamp system, But to your point, one of them, Willie Chiang, is the CEO and chair at Plains All-American Pipeline, of all places. The other is Maria Black, the CEO of Automatic Data Processing. They're two strange skill sets to bring onto the Delta board.
No, neither of them is in transportation logistics, anything like that.
Not even remotely, yeah.
And definitely not AI or technology. The only technology person on this board actually is a cybersecurity person. He's been there the longest.
I'm glad you pointed that out. There are actually two features of this board that intrigue me. One is David DeWalt, who you pointed out, who is a deep background in cybersecurity. I believe the former CEO of McAfee, but he's involved with a lot of other cybersecurity companies. And you're right, he's been there since 2011, the year after CEO Ed Bastian joined the board. My only point of contention with him is not that, because I have long proposed that all boards should have cybersecurity expertise at this point. So I'm glad to see that. Let's not forget that Southwest, right, a couple of years ago, didn't they have a complete meltdown? I don't think it was a cybersecurity attack, but they did have some software meltdown.
They had
right?
a software meltdown. They couldn't take anybody's orders,
Right.
or they were filling orders and they couldn't fill the planes.
My only point of contention here is that David DeWalt, for some reason, is the chair of the nomination committee, which I don't know. I'm not really impressed with the people he's bringing on. So but anyway, that's one feature I actually like about this board. The other feature I like, although this is also happening at American Airlines, but something that is not happening at American companies in general, that's another thing that I highly support. There's actually, Matt, a pilot, a Delta employee, Christopher Hazelton. Yes, according to our performance, his performance sucks, but whatever. He is on this board. There's actually, like some of the European boards, especially in Germany, there is an employee representative on the Delta board. I think that's fantastic.
Which is a smart move when you have labor problems across the industry. But
absolutely.
Look, I'll say this about the board.
I know you have nothing really to say, so go ahead.
I want to get back to I need to define like sort of a theory of change here. Like, what is the vote pregame theory going into the shareholder votes? The board, I spent days looking at this board. I could nitpick all along the margins. This is a master class in the most basic, mediocre best practice you can you can come up with.
It's funny you say that, because it's the type of board that if you squint, it kind of resembles a European board, right? It's one that has learned over the last 2 decades, it has learned some of the best practices from the progress in corporate governance, and it has adopted those things, and you can't really find a lot to fault, right?
Well, even you saying I've been advocating for cybersecurity on every single board, right?
And they
have their one cybersecurity person on this board. This board has low connectivity amongst the members that we can find on paper.
Yep.
Like there are a couple instances where Ed Bastian and Waller, they're both on the Woodruff Arts, which is an Atlanta Arts Center board together, right?
I even applaud that this company, not only do they tell us what the public directorships are of their members, of course, which they all do, they actually make a point of listing the affiliations of each board member, which to me is a very progressive sort of moment in disclosure, right? They itemize every civic board that these people are involved with. Also, one other feature, which is very European, which I appreciate, is that according to our data, the chair, David Taylor, who's the former CEO at Procter & Gamble, he actually has slightly more board influence than the CEO, Ed Bastian, and I would guess that's because he is very highly connected, whereas Ed Bastian is a Delta lifer and probably only has buddies from the Delta break room, I'm guessing.
But even Taylor, highly connected, he's connected to 2 other board members, so not even a majority. He basically has roles on multiple committees. The way, basically, if you were to game the way anybody's governance data works, including ours to a lesser degree, Delta's doing it. Right? There's decent refreshment on this board, although to your point, semi-questionable in terms of skills added.
Sure.
The Delta has like a designated pilot. Like if you're a governance person, you love the idea of an employee representative on the board, but they are the worst performer on the board by our metric, right?
But let's be fair. That's not why this person is on this board. It's not to contribute to earnings, really. I mean, it's to provide other insight.
My point is everybody is a good butt kind of, it's like a good butt board, right?
Well,
like they have...
Good butt is a victory in our world.
They only have 25% women on the board, but 3 is the bare minimum number by most governance data points, right? 3 women.
I'll tell you what, I don't know if there's a major, I'm guessing there is a major issue with groupthink in the airline industry, going back to what you're talking about with Southwest and, hedging fuel and all that, is that it seems to be that every American airline industry stops at 3 women on the
They
board.
do. I don't know what that is. They all stopped at 3.
Well, a lot of these companies are also they're not based on the coast, right? These are not New York, California companies, right? These are like Midwest, Texan, right? Chicago. They're more traditional locations, these companies.
So after going through board member by board member, and I could tell you one thing I don't like about every one of them, and then one thing where I'm like, well, yeah, but I guess
I'd like to hear
that's
that
okay.
maybe later. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could do that
At a
after
party.
the show.
Yeah, at a dinner party.
Here's where I landed with a theory
All
of a vote theory for this company. Do you want to change the winningest of a losing industry? And
You might want to. You might need to.
You might want to, right?
Yeah.
When you're thinking about that, think about this. Director tenure, the average director tenure is between 7 and 9 years, right?
Okay.
What is the pivot in airlines over the next decade for an industry that literally everyone hates and is under duress, considering the following facts? Delta has made the following pledges.
Oh.
A 10% increase in sustainable aviation fuel by 2030, a 35% increase by 2035, a 95% increase by 2050, and net zero by 2050.
Right.
They were the first airline to come out in the U.S. with those pledges.
All right.
We know that there's going to be an emphasis on efficiency in these airlines.
Yeah.
Airlines contribute as an industry 2% of global emissions. You might not be an emissions person. If you're not an emissions person, then having a board that basically spends its time hedging oil, futures and doing what Delta's doing, probably not a bad thing. You might be worried about the age of the fleet and some other stuff, but mostly it's like just run what you're running. You're the winningest of the losers.
Yeah.
But
I got to ask,
thinking,
before you get any further, I got to ask, do they have anyone on the board that would suggest an expertise in achieving those goals?
Exactly not.
Okay,
so
all
if
right.
you are thinking these directors that we're electing today need to exist 10 years from now, and they're the ones who are going to own some of these kind of pledges, there's going to be a different environment 10 years from now. Who are they? Who should we bring in? I'll cut to the chase. I said vote for this entire board with a huge caveat.
Which is?
That now we're into skills and knowledge refreshment to address what's going to happen over the next 7 to 10 years.
Right.
Because you have a lot of pledges and not a lot of knowledge on how to get there on this board.
Yeah.
So
that's funny that when we were talking about this earlier, the one thing that stood out to me, because I did have similar issue kind of finding major problems. The one issue I did have was that the new 2 directors don't really appear to be additive, right? For the long term that you're suggesting.
right. Willie Chang is basically a replacement agent for the other oil and gas person who's leaving, Easter, right? Maria Black does not make a lot of sense to me, except that if you have a labor problem, ADP is the data behind labor. I don't really I mean, like everything felt kind of like a stretch. I did run this by Ari, Ari in our office here.
Ari, the data queen.
The data queen. I showed her a chart showing the age of Delta's fleet against their carbon efficiency per kilometer, a passenger mile. And Ari pointed out that Delta has one of the oldest fleets in the world, which actually older planes are less efficient fuel-wise than newer planes are.
Of course.
So they're losing on the per plane sort of efficiency, but they are also one of the best overall at their carbon efficiency, right? Like per kilometer traveled.
But as you said, like the best out of a group of low performing companies, right?
Sure.
Right.
But the point here is what Delta's board does, and this is in fitting with the overall analysis of Delta and Delta's board being the winningest of the losers, right? Is they are absolutely maximizing the efficiency of the assets that they have. So it's like what appears to be happening is they are constantly maximizing where they're at. This is a very right now kind of board, a right now kind of culture. like they're not replacing the planes at an astronomical rate because it's really expensive. So they're going to have an old fleet. How do you adjust for that? Well, you adjust the routes. You do. Like Ari was like, you shouldn't be using big planes on small routes. It's like super simple and stupid things. You maximize your times that you're flying so that the plane is fuller. You minimize the amount of business class seats so that it's a little bit more efficient in terms of emissions and even fuel usage. All these little things add up to, well, we're going to make sure we're hugely efficient the way we run, but hugely efficient today. Not hugely efficient for tomorrow. So here is my suggestion.
Okay.
Let's get right to the suggestions.
Let's do it.
I am going to say vote for this whole board.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't happen very much. I know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say vote for all of them.
Okay.
And here is my thinking going forward.
Yeah.
You absolutely need to be thinking 7 to 10 years from now, the tenure of the next incoming directors. And you want to replace the following skills, the following knowledge bases. You have so much econ and finance on this board.
Sure.
Leslie Hale is a real estate REIT executive. Pravu is the CFO of Visa, the CFO of NBC,
Former
the CFO of
CFO, yeah.
Starwood. He's
Right.
CFO. He's just a
Sure.
CFO. Real was the CEO of Santander Brazil, which is a bank, and he was the CEO of big meat manufacturers in Brazil. Why? Why
Yeah.
meat manufacturing? What is that getting you? Like, what does that experience get you?
Delicious.
Last
sliced
time I
meats, yeah.
checked, airlines don't even serve food on any of these flights.
They
You have the
shouldn't, by the way,
CFO
yeah.
from Coca-Cola, the CEO from Yum and Taco Bell. What are we doing here? You want to replace
Kathy
that.
Waller, too, former CFO of the Coca-Cola Company.
Exactly. You want to replace these with sustainable fuel. Like if you're going to put Willie Chang on this board, who's a pure oil and gas person, you could find somebody. I went and I looked. I looked for these people. Sari Mananan is a PhD in biochem. She's on the Nest Oij board. It's the largest manufacturer of sustainable aviation fuel, and it's still an oil company, right? You can get oil company executives who probably know something about oil and gas for the hedges, who also are the biggest providers of sustainable aviation fuel or are in biofuels in general.
I appreciate your point. Then why are you supporting the two new directors then?
Well, because first of all, you do have to deal with the now. Willie Chang has a place on this board now. And to your point, they've been added to the board. Like you'd be replacing them without the ability to put somebody else on, right?
You know, I complain constantly about how this world of ESG, corporate governance, whatever you want to call it, how it's basically been stagnant for the last 20 years, right? There just isn't a lot of innovation. A lot of gains were made, right? For instance, a lot of the largest companies have a separation in the roles of CEO and chair. Great. There's a lot of great progress in that regard. But no one's asking for anything else, right? And to me, this is the perfect area for people to start asking for more, and that is when there are new nominees for these boards. How about giving us a choice? How about outlining their different skill sets and what they could offer, and giving me? Why don't you give the shareholder a choice? Like this person represents sustainable aviation industry, and
like
this
a
person
draft.
represents there.
I love it.
There's no reason I can't. What is the logical argument against that? I don't. That one person's going to be a loser. But they're not losers. They're already highly successful executives. So
if you go out and you're finding directors, you don't find two.
Right.
You have to go through a list of 10 or 12.
Let the shareholders
or whatever.
decide.
Let the shareholders pick the ones out of those if they're all willing.
And if they really want Maria Black, the CEO of all things of automatic data processing, while at the same time, while Elliott Investment Management probably is, Matt, looking for the person that you just mentioned, right? They are looking for innovative people. If you really want to pick Maria Black over someone else, go for it, but at least give them a choice. This is just ridiculous.
And to Elliott's point, my second skill that I think you need on this, which I cannot figure out why it's not prominently everywhere in airlines, is actual transportation logistics.
In America, at least. I don't know about the rest of the world, but on American airline boards, transportation expertise basically does not exist.
According to our knowledge, our knowledge map of this board, Transportation, the only person with transportation experience on the board is Ed Bastian, and he was the CFO. He didn't even do that. Like, just because he was at this company, he has some of the experience, but he's not a logistics person.
Right.
His background was CFO. He was a comptroller before that. Where are the people who are good at moving an object from A to B on this board? Like, that is the core thing that you do.
Greg Creed was the CEO, wasn't he, at Taco Bell, Yum Brands?
That's true. He did move me from the drive-through lane to the bathroom very efficiently.
The drive-through lanes, there is a lot of logistics, and some of them are becoming 2 different lanes, right? There's a lot going on there.
So my overall recommendation for this board is you vote for them, and then next year it's about knowledge and skills reconstitution. You need a different mindset over the next decade, and you have to know that every director that you're electing today is going to be there 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now. And which ones do you want to represent you then is really the core question.
Okay, quickly, let's get so we can get out of here. Say on pay. I will say this. This year, Delta has introduced a one-time enhanced awards to certain named executive officers. So what this really means in a nutshell is that they have magically come up with some extra money for CEO Ed Bastian and 2 other executives. I don't know why it's just 3 executives, not anybody else. CEO Ed Bastian is getting an additional $14 million in equity. And this is the thing that shareholders usually hate. They usually hate special awards, discretionary awards, one-time awards, because it's out of the purview of the normal pay plan. If you want to reward your management for say, for outpacing your peers, it should be built into the pay plan and not these like magical one-time awards. So I would guess that they're going to get some pushback on this, which I think they should. Also, the CEO pay ratio this year is 336 to 1. I think that'll probably stick out as well. So that's what's going on at Say on Pay. Matt, 2 shareholder proposals. That's it this year. One from John Chevedden requesting a report related to third-party political contributions. That doesn't seem a very Chevedden-esque request. And then As You Sow, requesting the adoption of a non-interference policy. Again, that doesn't seem very As You Sow, but only 2 going on there. I will remind you, Matt, that last year, shareholders said yes to another John Chevedden shareholder proposal, one for the calling for the ratification of termination pay. That's a pretty big win as far as shareholders go. We're seeing very low numbers in that this year to ratify termination pay for executives. So shareholders seem to be kind of paying attention at this company, Matt.
I can't for the life of me figure out what they're paying attention to most of the time.
The one thing that has mystified us week after week after week is the pattern in shareholder voting across individual companies, industries, regions makes absolutely 0 sense. I mean,
even this pay package, and I did an analysis of the pay package that I'll put online. It doesn't make much sense to me either, unless in a way it's an end run around Chevedden's termination pay. Ratification, right? Like, give him the money now as part of a one-time enhanced pay, knowing that he's going to retire in 2 years, and this is a way to give him, extra money now. Look, that's all conspiracy theory, but here, with the pay, I'm saying vote no on pay, and I would usually couple it with vote no on the pay committee, but I'm not going to at this point, not because I'm not aware of my own hypocrisy, but mostly because I don't know how to gel just the one-time pay thing with other pay. I compared it to every other pay at these large cap U.S. companies, and it makes no sense.
I will say this: that the head of the compensation committee is a guy that you're already uncomfortable with, named Sergio Rial, who's the vice chair of a global food company. Anyway, that's what's going on there. Any other thing you want to add there?
No, I say no. I'm no on both shareholder proposals, even though I'm usually yes on anything Chevedden does. But I don't know that these are. I think the core problem here is skills on the board. I think it's the people on the board that you want to reconstitute over the next 5 to 7 years, not these issues. That's my summary.
Before I wrap up, let me also add that As You Sow had one last year to a freedom of association and collective bargaining policy that also got high support, 32%. So something is in the water with these Delta shareholders. I don't know what it is. Is it the rancid orange juice that they serve you out of those disgusting cartons?
It's probably the really, really tiny cans of Schweppes ginger ale,
which I actually love. That's the Proxy Countdown for the week of June 10th, 2024. Join us next week when we jump back into the alternative democracy pool, hopefully with a company maybe more exciting than Delta Airlines. Forever on the lookout for shareholder sharks, floating band-aids, and wayward directors.